Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Next Game, New Game podcast here on YouTube Live and through Google Hangout. Matt Catrillo back here with you, and it's our annual draft show, getting ready for the 2019 NFL Draft, which is only one sleep away now. And joining me is the man who loves this time of the year. It's his personal Christmas. I use this phrase every year just to spite him a little bit. Alex Kozora joining us from SteelersDepot.com. Alex, what's going on?
Hey, Catrilla, yeah, good to be back, man. This has been, I know we say this every year, it's another phrase we use, but it's just been a crazy draft where I'm sitting here, 24 hours out saying, I have no idea what's happening tomorrow.
I'm kind of with you. This is probably, and again, the same thing. This is really going to be unpredictable tomorrow, honestly, compared to some of the quarterbacks that what's going to happen there, and a lot of other speculation has come up today that certainly could alter things very, very quickly. We'll get into that in just a little bit too, and then of course you have the depth at some positions, which we'll get to, starting with defensive line, and then we'll also get into the Eagles and Steelers too. But yeah, it's so many different scenarios can happen. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds tomorrow night. So, Alex, first, let's start with the cream of the crop of this draft class and overall in 2019, which we've talked about before in previous episodes, which is this defensive line class. So, what kind of? I know there's some of the obvious names. You have Nick Bosa, you have Quinnen Williams, and Oliver, Montez Sweat, some of those guys. What do you like about some of those guys, and who else might be standing out to you?
Yeah, it's a really good class. It's a deep class. It's got elite talent at the top. There's a lot of depth overall in this draft class at most positions or a lot of positions, but there isn't that top heavy guy for a lot of groups, like let's say receiver, maybe even tight end. Although I think tight end TJ Hawkinson's a cut above the rest. But yeah, defensive line. Ed Oliver's a really interesting guy. We all know his story, how dominant he was for the Cougars. But the question is, where do you want to play him? Is he a three tech? Is he an off ball linebacker? There's options there. You have to kind of be creative with the scheme and have a plan for him. But I think the talent wins out and says, this guy's so talented. We'll find a way to get him on the field because he's going to produce really wherever you put him. But it's going to be interesting to see, is he going to go to Oakland? Is he going to drop? I know Atlanta's interested in Buffalo. He's a guy that could really fit any system. So just a question of really the valuation of him and the evaluation of him and how you grade him personally compared to guys like Quinnen Williams, who probably for my money is the number one player in this draft class. It just could not be stopped at Bama last year. And we know all the great talent in the SEC and the great teams that he faced, and really no one could get a handle on him. So, could he even be the number one overall pick? Possibly. You look at number 2 is San Francisco. They got an interesting decision to make with Nick Bosa versus Quinnen Williams versus Ed Oliver. We'll see what Arizona does at 1. But you got some good outside linebackers, Josh Allen, who can play hand up, hand down, really versatile guy that moved all over Kentucky's front. Kentucky's got a ton of defensive talent this year. Then I look even in the mid round, Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State, coming off that torn ACL, some character concerns, but probably still going to be a first round pick. Will he play this year? We're not sure. And I look at Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame, a guy I'm really high on, a guy that I think has comparable to Stephon Tuitt, that's coming off a torn labrum, played hurt last year. That's kind of why people knock his tape, but he played through the pain. So that's a guy that I think could be a late first round pick, but if not, really good value in the early to mid second round.
Yeah, a lot of good names there. I'm going to start with Ed Oliver because you and I are on the same page here with him. I see him as an inside guy. I don't see an edge guy. I just don't think he's consistent enough to be a good, solid pass rusher in this league. Sure, he has the speed. Sure, he's got the strength, but he needs to create better moves for him and to get some of that separation, to get off of blocks, to get some pressure on the quarterback from the outside. And I just don't really see it consistent enough for me on tape. Really, not much of a swim move there, not much of a spin move either. He was kind of taken out of those types of plays. But I mean, tremendous against the run because of the strength that he brings and how fast he is off the ball. And this is a guy that can get sideline to sideline too, if a running back were to break to the outside and get to the second level. But I know you kind of feel the same way. I kind of see Ed Oliver as a inside guy for the most part.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how teams view him. I really circle Oakland at 4. I know he's been all over the map, but I just feel like John Gruden and Mike Mayock are going to look at this guy and say, this dude's a football player, and if we can't get him on the field and get him productive, that's on us, not him. But, I mean, it'll be interesting. Oliver is certainly one of the wild cards. I'll throw 3 other names at you real quick that are defensive end, edge kind of hybrid guys. 2 of them are medical concerns, and when you talk about the medical, combine medical rechecks, you never know how teams are going to evaluate that. They're really unpredictable when it comes to draft day because, who's on their board, who's off their board. Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, just killed the combine, one of the best combine workouts ever from anyone. But he's got a heart condition, and that seems to scare teams off. Is that, the pre-draft misinformation we're used to? Maybe, but is it legitimate? It might be too. Rashawn Gary from Michigan, who's got some weird tape. I like his strength. He's got a really good long arm stab, but he's got a shoulder injury, and teams are worried about that short and long term. Could he stumble out of the first round, late first round? That's possible. He doesn't have good production. That's really hurting him. But the guy I really like, it could be a DN, could be an outside linebacker, Cleveland Farrell from Clemson. I mean, this guy is just fantastic. I mean, on the field, off the field, highly productive. I think he had 50 tackles for loss in his career, part of that really strong Clemson team that boasts, Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins. Farrell's a guy that I think has better bend than people anticipated. He had to lead to a turf toe injury last year. A guy with really advanced hand use, which I love to see. He's got a good pass rush plan, and a guy that did drop into coverage and move around. A smart guy, high character, comes from military family. Both parents, I think, were in the Army. So this is a guy that I really like and potentially there for Pittsburgh at 20.
Yeah, definitely. And if I go back to one guy that we talked about, you mentioned it's going to be interesting to see what San Francisco does at 2 between Quinnen Williams or Nick Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a chance to see Nick Bosa, but just looking at Quinnen Williams, I mean, you talk about a disruptive force, relentless pressure on the quarterback. I think he's got about as good a swim move as I've ever seen from anyone. And you definitely see that quickness off the ball. He also tackles very well, too. And he shows good instincts, especially when he's going against the read option. And he played that read option well. If you put on the tape from the championship game against Clemson, he's just overall just a really consistent guy. And I think he's going to be a very, very good football player in this league. So I really just love Quinnen Williams there. So that's kind of look what we got at the defensive line so far. Let's move to the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, Alex, and go offensive line. I think the guy that stands out to me is Jonah Williams from Alabama. I think definitely is worthy enough to be a top 10 pick, if not maybe very close to like maybe a 6 or 7 overall pick. Great technique and pass protection for the most part. He does sometimes get caught standing up slightly, but that would be only my really knock on him. Quick off the ball, and he's quick to get to that second level as well, which is really key now in the NFL, especially when you have all the different read options and pass combinations, things like that. And is obviously very solid in the run game too. I really like what I see from Jonah Williams, and he's a massive person as well. 6'4", 302. He's got almost 34-inch arms, over 10-inch hands. He actually ran a very good 40 time too in the combine, 5.12 for offensive tackles. Great. So I really love what I see from Jonah Williams too. He's going to be a solid player.
I totally agree, Matt, and I'm really glad you brought up his arm length because people knock his arm length all the time. So I know they're too short, he can't play. I mean, it's what you do with your hand using your arm length rather than the arm length itself. And people talk,
especially for a left tackle too.
Yeah, and people talk about Andre Dillard being this, prototypical right tackle. He's got shorter arms than Jonah Williams. So, the hypocrisy there is insane. It just, I think there's some inherent bias going on there with the makeup and the build of Williams versus Dillard. But yeah, I love Jonah Williams. This is one of the smartest players in this draft, and a guy that may make up for, the occasional lack of length, which, again, I don't think is a big concern, but it will pop up from time to time on tape, as it does for a lot of these guys. But this guy, I mean, he's a good self-studier. He wants to get better, and he keeps a chart, like a spreadsheet of his opponent and the pass rush moves that they use, and he'll chart it each week to really have excellent tape study on their opponent, their tendencies, and the ways that they win. So he's going to be as prepared as anybody in this draft when it comes to week 1, and that makes him a really impressive guy. I like him. And then 2, just kind of junkyard dogs, Caleb McGarry and Dalton Risner, Washington and Kansas State respectively. Just old school prototypical tackles that love to get nasty, love to run block. I love the way that they finish and just attack the game. Risner was awesome at the Senior Bowl, just being competitive. I mean, from start to finish, the last day of practice, they're doing one-on-one drills, and he won the last 2 reps, and John Gruden's going crazy. He's going crazy. I mean, this is just a dude. And so I would take him as early as late round 1. If you get him in the round 2, I think you got a steal.
You're definitely there. Now let's go to running back real quick, Alex. Again, the guy that stands out to me is Josh Jacobs. But it's going to be interesting to see where he falls. I think he's worthy of a first-round pick. I know you got the injury concerns out there, but to me, Josh Jacobs is the definition of a complete back. Excellent vision, great acceleration out of the backfield, and shows his athleticism with his cutback ability and all the times he's utilized in the Wildcat that Alabama used, especially in the championship game and in the SEC championship game against Georgia. Unbelievable toughness. He's obviously really tough to bring down. Ball security overall is pretty good, minus 1 fumble I saw he had that he got back. But best of all, that really, really stands out to me. I think this is probably as good as I've ever seen from running back coming out of the draft. He can block, and he can block well. Textbook pass protection. And he can be dangerous out of the backfield too. So again, injuries are a concern, but I think this guy is super, super worth taking. And I think he's going to be available late in the first round for the Eagles. We'll get into a little bit later, but I love Josh Jacobs, Alex.
Yeah, number one back. I don't think there's much doubt about it. The question is where he's going to go. I've definitely heard the Eagles connection. I got a Raiders buddy of mine that's convinced Oakland's taking him, I think at 24 or 27, whichever the picks that they're going to use on him. So I'd watch that. Yeah, late first round, Philly, Oakland might be duking it out for Josh Jacobs. They got his teammate, too, Damian Harris, that's probably going to go somewhere on day 2. Just to throw a couple other names at you. I love the speed guys. I love the big playmakers. This draft's got a couple of them. Darrell Henderson's one of the best dynamic runners in the last decade, probably. I think he averaged over 8 yards per carry at Memphis. Just a dude that ripped off 50-plus yards time and time again. Justice Hill from Oklahoma State ran a 4.4 flat, tested it really well. And then one name I'll give you that's an opposite, build of that, Benny Snell Jr., bigger guy, 225 pounds. I don't know if I love the prospect, but I want to love the prospect. I love this story. This is a dude that was lightly recruited, passed over by Ohio State and other big schools, goes to Kentucky, which was a bad football program a couple of years ago. By the time he leaves it, he's the third, I think, in SEC history in rushing yards behind, I think, Tim Tebow and Herschel Walker, or something like that. But Kentucky won 10 games. They won their bowl game against Penn State. They turned that into a football school. This dude set every record at Kentucky. He's got really good bloodlines, too. His dad played football, played in NFL Europe, played in the XFL, too, in the first XFL. His great uncle, Matt Snell, was the running back for the Jets in Super Bowl III when they beat the Colts. That name was guaranteed game. So there's really good bloodlines. He's high character. Highly productive. I think 48 touchdowns in his career. So I probably doesn't go till later day 3 because he didn't run well. He ran 4.65. But you get Benny Snell on day 3 as kind of a niche back. I really like him.
I'm the same with you, Alex, about Benny Snell. Now, I haven't had a chance to really look at his tape, but from the games that I've watched with Kentucky this year, in particular the Penn State game and the bowl game, you can tell the amount of energy he brought to that team, and just the way he rose the level of that team, and especially offensively, and really rose that program. He was the face of that program, especially last year. And I think there's some good things you can see. He's good out of the back. He's good passing out of the backfield from what I saw in the games this year. Obviously, you see the speed and athleticism and the acceleration he can have. But then I see what he did in the combine, as you mentioned, 4.65, and I was extremely disappointed. I was really, really excited to see him out of a lot of players going into the combine. I was really disappointed. So I'm on the fence about him too. But I do think you probably won't see him go until day 3. I think there's maybe a slight chance he can get late into day 2, but I doubt it. I think he's probably going to be an early 4th round pick, but that's a name definitely to keep a lookout for too. That's going to be really intriguing to see where he goes.
Yeah, no, I agree. The explosive, the big playability is probably lacking, so that's a concern there. He's probably not going to be a number 1 starter, but a number 2 guy I love. Check out that Florida game. You talk about energy and character and how much this game means to him. They beat Florida. Kentucky did it for the first time, I believe, in 31 years last year. And after the game, I mean, the dude could barely contain himself. The interview he gave after was just awesome. So a guy that loves the game, and I think that he's going to carve out a role in the NFL.
And now we'll go to quarterbacks, because this is really going to dictate, as it normally does every year, but especially this year, how the first round's going to go. Yeah, many different opinions of what quarterbacks are going to go, how many quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. And I want to start with talking about Kyler Murray, because he's obviously been the lightning rod of this quarterback class. And I think is the best quarterback in this class, though. I have to say I haven't watched Dwayne Haskins, but I'm confident enough in what I saw from Murray that I think I can stand by that. And Alex, last time you and I were together on this show, I didn't really have a lot of good things to say about Kyler Murray, based on a lot of the character things that rumors that you heard, and you see how he handled the Dan Patrick interview during the Super Bowl and a couple other things that came up. But after looking at his tape, I've kind of changed my mind about him. Now, before I get into that, I want to still make clear by saying I still wouldn't agree with the Cardinals taking him, because I'm still not a person that says that you give up on not alone a head coach, but a quarterback in 1 year, and a guy like Josh Rosen, who I thought was the best quarterback of last year's draft class. I think he was the best, most NFL ready. And
they're poised to do both, since he got rid of Steve Wilkes, and now they might get rid of Rosen.
Right, exactly. So, but having said that, I think Kyler Murray, the prospect, is very solid, and I think can be a franchise quarterback in this league. Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. Incredible arm, and I think what stands out about him the most is his pocket presence. And what I really love about him in particular is he does a tremendous job keeping his eyes downfield. He looks like a field general out there to me, and his decision making is pretty good for the most part. And obviously, he's very dangerous running. But I also love, this is the second thing that stands out to me about him. He's a throw first mobile quarterback.
Right.
If you put in the Texas game with the Big 12 championship game, and you put in the Alabama game, the Orange Bowl game, if you still are going to tell me afterwards that he's a mobile quarterback, then I don't know what you're watching. And you know me, Alex. I've always been very highly critical of mobile quarterbacks.
Oh yeah,
like a Kyler Murray. But if you show me, this is the most I've ever seen of a guy that's that as mobile as Kyler Murray, that is going to be, he wants to be a throw first mobile quarterback. And I think that was clear as day. And if you don't see that, then I just don't understand what you're watching. It's just plain and simple. And if you go back to that Alabama game, I don't think there's any much you can say about his character, because when you get down, when you're as young as Kyler Murray is, remember, this kid's only a sophomore.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Okay. The way you get down in a big game like that against Alabama early, everything was going wrong that could go wrong for Oklahoma in that game. You get down 21-0. And you bring your team back the way he did and make it a game against that team. I don't know. I don't know how else you can knock his character by the way you pick up what happened. He threw a bad he had a couple of bad decisions early that led it to being 21-0. You look at some of the throws he made at that point, going down the stretch there, and also made some plays with his legs. I'm not going to deny that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you turn your head away from that if you're a team looking for a quarterback. That's the way I'm going to leave it. Now, if you go to the Dan Patrick interview, and I've said this before, I think he just wasn't really coached enough, because I went back and watched the interview literally after I finished watching his tape, because I just found it impossible that his character was that bad. He just looked unprepared for that interview. I don't know whether it was his agent at the time or family, whatever. He just wasn't prepared as to what to say to properly respond, but dodge the question like you normally do when you have something like this happen, where you're already committed to the Oakland A's in baseball, but then you have your Heisman winner, you're projected to maybe be a number 1 overall pick in the NFL. So I just don't think he was really ready to do that interview. And had he been more prepared, I think he could have come out a little bit better. But overall, you put the tape on himself, I don't see how. I think it's pretty much undeniable he's the number 1 rated quarterback in this draft class.
Yep, you're right. I'm not worried about the character. Yeah, the Dan Patrick interview was weird, but I mean, like you said, it was just kind of an awkward situation, kind of uncharted territory, and I'm not going to hold that against him enough to make me pass on him if I think he's a franchise quarterback. With Murray, you've probably studied him more than I have, to be honest, but I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about him, being mobile, but being a throw first quarterback, someone that can make plays within the pocket and then use his mobility when the play breaks down or the coverage is too good, and then it can extend from outside of it, and that's critical. But with him, I really just see the qualities that I've seen in guys like Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. I see a toughness in his game, and a resiliency in his game. And you mentioned the Bama contest, which I think is critical, that really defines these quarterbacks. You got to be tough to play quarterback. You're going to get hit. You're going to have adversity. You're going to have bad games. They're going to boo you. The media is going to call you out. You're going to have those moments. You have to be able to rise up and overcome them and will the guys around you to make them better. And those are traits I especially saw in Deshaun Watson. I think they're in Kyler Murray, and he's probably going to be the number 1 pick because of it.
Yep, I'm totally with you there. So we're on the same page as far as Murray being the best quarterback of the main 4, we'll just say. Now, I'm curious to know, Alex, where you go after that. I've seen a couple different combinations. For me, I would probably have to go Haskins 2 and Drew Lock 3, and then Daniel Jones 4. As I just watched Daniel Jones, I wasn't impressed at all. We can get into that in a second. But where do you stand with the rest of these main 4 quarterbacks?
Yeah, again, I didn't watch quarterbacks a ton. I really don't love any of those guys. I'm usually pretty friendly with the quarterbacks. You're usually critical of them, so I feel like we're in opposite directions this year. Haskins, I know he's a 1-year guy. He's supposed to get better, but that lack of mobility really hurts. And it's not just plays outside the pocket. It's within the pocket, too. I think that's going to be an issue. Daniel Jones, I'm definitely a no on. I think just looking at the history of the college production, the low completion percentage, I know that they dropped 38 passes last year. 2 receivers did, but still, generally speaking, when you have poor completion completion percentage in college. It doesn't magically jump up in the NFL. You're not 60% in college, then 65% in the NFL. So that worries me. So if I was an evaluator, I mean, I'd probably stay clear of this class. It's kind of what Miami's doing. They're kind of tanking for Tua for next year. But I might go with a Tyree Jackson, a really interesting dude, a big arm, great size, 6'7", 249. That's ability to throw off platform. And I thought really had a good career at Buffalo. Yes, there's some issues in his game, some big inconsistencies. So he's definitely a developmental guy. But you're looking at Kyler Murray and then watch after Ryan Finley. It sounds like after the quarterbacks in round one, Murray, Haskins, Locke, and Jones, the next two that we aren't talking about a lot, but the next two in round two will be West Virginia's Will Grier and North Carolina State's Ryan Finley. And of those quarterbacks, besides Murray, I might like Will Grier the most out of them. So I think it's Murray or bust in this class, though.
I totally agree, and you're going to hear the same rant again that I went on last year's, Alex. So you'll have to
buckle up
a little bit here. Yeah, buckle up, because yes, you're right. I'm not I'm not a big fan of this class either, other than Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray is your only quarterback that should have a first-round grade. And once again, you have NFL teams and scouts that are so desperate for a quarterback that they're overvaluing these guys. You look at Dwayne Haskins. You mentioned his immobility. There's other issues with him, too. You look at Drew Lock. He doesn't have that it factor to me. And you look at Daniel Jones's tape, and it's just absolutely atrocious. There's no other way to describe it. It's that bad where you have basically, except for Kyler Murray, guys I think that should be second, third, even day 3 picks, because teams are so desperate for quarterbacks now. And this is a precedent that's just been set very recently. And actually was I take this back to the Eagles and the Rams when they made those trades to get Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. Now, it's worked out for those teams, of course, and I'm happy from an Eagles standpoint, it has worked out. But what I'm saying is, because that precedent was set, and the Eagles and Rams got lucky that they did find a guy that they maybe overvalued slightly. Now you have teams that are just going overboard now with these guys, where you look at every one of them. Again, except for Kyler Murray, they're just so imperfect that I just don't see a first-round pick. To me, and again, I'm more heavily critical of most quarterbacks. You have to really wow me. You have to show that it fact. You have to blow me away for say, yes, you can be my franchise guy. You can be a first-round pick. Other than Kyler Murray, you don't see that with anybody on this team. And because teams are getting so desperate, you could see these 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, and I just don't understand it. I really don't.
Yeah, well, as you said, it's the demand for the position. It's the idea of we don't have a franchise quarterback. We need to get a franchise quarterback or feel like we don't have any chance. So that's just, that's the ill of football, is that desperation, as you said.
Yeah, I get it's the ill, but at the same time, teams have to go back and wonder, hey, if this is really not the guy, then we're gonna be stepped back for even more years now. Yep. Instead of, I know I get, if you think a guy's good, you got to take the risk and go for it. I get that, but I think teams need to find that balance again of, yes, we should take a chance. I think this guy can do something, or you know what, maybe we should wait. I think teams have just lost that balance right now when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks.
You know what team I mocked to the Eagles in my mock draft, or what quarterback I mocked to Philadelphia? And it's kind of a cheeky pick, but I went with it anyway.
Who's that?
Easton Stick from North Dakota State, the Carson Wentz old backup, replaced him his freshman year. I could see it. They need a backup quarterback.
Yeah, you know what? It wouldn't surprise me, honestly. And I think I may have seen one link to the Eagles with this kid. I don't know if the Eagles have actually met with him at all. I can't confirm that, but it wouldn't surprise me because, yeah, you're right. They do need a quarterback. It's just they only have 2 guys on the roster right now. It's Wentz and Sudfeld. So, yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me if at day 3 the Eagles get somebody. So, yeah, I think it's a really good point. But I'm just really fascinated to see, Alex, how this is going to go. If nobody trades up to get any of these guys, and we're going to get into that with our mock picks in a little bit, then the teens part of the draft, like 11 through 17, is going to be really, really interesting because you have 3 teams that are going to be really quarterback hungry, we think, it seems, between the Bengals, the Redskins, and the Giants. That's going to be a really fascinating part of the draft.
Yeah, what are the Giants doing at 6? That's going to help set the tempo for this quarterback group, assuming Murray goes 1.
Right, exactly. It's really going to be tremendously fascinating. So we'll get into that maybe a little bit more when we do our mock picks. And now let's get into our Pennsylvania football segment. Alex, let's start with the Steelers. I want to go to something you guys posted on Steelers Depot last night, where you had a Steelers trainer, a Steelers scout rather, that was on a scouting podcast. I mentioned that Rocky Ya-Sin could be the pick of number 20, the quarterback out of Temple. And if that's the case, Alex, I think that's a really, really good pick. I've seen a very minimal amount of tape on him, not enough to have a full evaluation, but right away, what jumped out at me from the couple seconds I've seen of him, guy that's got good ball skills, and I think a guy that can really, as a good press corner, I think he's very physical, and I think that's a good fit for the Steelers if they do go with him at 20. But I know you have some other options too, and I know you did not pick him in your mock draft either.
I didn't. I wouldn't hate the pick, but I don't see a first rounder with Rocky Sin. And to be clear, it wasn't a Steelers scout; it was just a scout in general. Been doing this for a long time.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that. But it sounded like he had it sourced. It wasn't his guess. It sounded like he's got some inside information,
Gotcha.
which he generally does with Dave T. Thomas. You can check out his podcast, CNN Scouts Honor is what it's called, with co-host Paul Crane. But with Ya-Sin, yeah, I just don't see a first round guy. I don't see maybe an athletic enough profile to play in a man heavy scheme. I see a good number 2 corner. I don't see someone that's ever going to be a number 1 kind of the guy type of corner. Now I know why people like him. I mean, I get it. He's a tough dude. They love his wrestling background. I think he was a 2-time state champion in wrestling down in Decatur, Georgia. He's a guy that was clearly loved by Temple. He wore that number 6, and the history of Temple Owls, and we're in single digits. That's given to the players that are the toughest guys on the team. He earned that in 8 months. I mean, he's a 1-year guy. He played at Presbyterian. They were moving to a non-scholarship conference, so he had to get out. I think he had a coach of a coach that found him at Temple. So I understand that. You're right. The ball skills are there. There's competitive toughness there. I just don't know if I see a good enough athlete to warrant that number 1 pick. And I want someone that has that record of big playmaking. I know he's picked off some passes. He had 5 in 2017 again when he was a member of Presbyterian. I think he had 2 last year for Temple. But I don't think that upside is high enough to warrant a 20. He wouldn't be my pick. I'll say that.
No, that's fair. I can see that perspective. Like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of tape, so I wouldn't be able to have seen some of those other notices you found there. Now, where do you feel where the Steelers are as far as linebacker goes? Obviously, I think it's one of the bigger needs. Do you see them maybe trading up? I can't remember off the top of my head what their ammo is as far as draft picks go, minus the first round. But is that a possibility, do you think?
Yeah, I think the number 1 guy is Devin Bush from Michigan. And the question is, the big choke point with Devin Bush is 10 and 11. 10 with Denver, 11 with Cincinnati. If he gets past there, I think you're looking at Pittsburgh possibly moving up. And they do have ammunition. They have 4 picks in the top 83, coming over from the AB trade. So there is that possibility there. They got 10 picks overall. I doubt they finish this draft and walk away with 10 draft picks. I think they make a move at some point, first round, second round, we'll see. But if they can't get Devin Bush, and that's unlikely, I don't see him falling to 20. They probably have to try to hope he gets past Cincinnati and hope Cincinnati goes with a quarterback, or same with Denver, and then try to move up. But I think Devin Bush is the number 1 guy. But if not him, if the reports are to be believed, it's going to be Rocky Ya-Sin. Now, there's also been reports about Greedy Williams. I would take Greedy Williams. That was what I had in my mock. That's what seemed to make the most sense. But Rocky Ya-Sin would be that kind of classic Steelers corner that might have worked well in 2005, but I don't think it works nearly as well in 2019.
Okay, yeah, I like some of those names too, so we'll keep an eye on that. And I actually think the Eagles might be trying to do the same thing. Oh, I shouldn't say that they might be trying, but I think that they should try to do the same thing as should the Steelers. I think this linebacker class is good, and I think some of these guys you mentioned, the Devin Bushes, and of course Josh Allen and others, and Devin White from LSU. I think those are guys that are worthy enough to try and trade up for, and I think the Steelers should definitely be one of those teams.
Yeah, I think Bush is number 1 guy. They sent you and I to Michigan's pro day. They just sent the house there. I think the interest is clear, but again, can you make the trade up work? And they've tried to trade up in the past. Tried to trade up last year for Alabama's Sean Evans. The odds just aren't great, especially if he's going top 10, where the cost is going to be just too high.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be definitely fun to keep an eye on there to see what happens there with the linebackers go. So let's go to the Eagles now. And I think, Alex, this is probably the first Eagles draft where I look back and I look at where the roster stands at this point, where the Eagles are as a team, and I feel like they can really go. You should obviously, any team should have this approach every year, but I think it's especially true for the Eagles this year, where they can really just have that general approach of taking the best player available, and I think that's a really good spot for the Eagles to be in right now. They can go a couple different angles. I guess for a couple scenarios for me for the first round that I've talked about before. My number 1 thing is, I think the number 1 priority for the Eagles should be try and trade up to get a linebacker, as I just mentioned before. Guy like a Devin Bush. I think it's going to be too high to get guys like a Josh Allen or a Devin White, though I'd love to see him in Eagle Green. Linebacker is probably, to me, the biggest need right now for the Eagles at this point, now that they've addressed the defensive line a little bit more. They got Deshaun Jackson at receiver. They made the trade for Jordan Howard, though I think they could still take a running back maybe in the first round. So Eagles can go in a couple different ways. And I also would be, if it doesn't work out a linebacker for the Eagles, then I think they should do one of two things depending on how the board goes. Either you attack the line of scrimmage, whether you get an offensive tackle, whether you get another defensive lineman. I think either one there should be great because you saw the Eagles' success winning the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It was because of the amount of depth they have at the defensive line, really, and how dominant they were in the trenches. So I think that should be priority number 2. Priority number 3, if Josh Jacobs is on the board, they got to take him. I think he's really that good. I know that would crowd things up for the Eagles. It's going to be a crowded running back class anyway, heading into camp. But I just really think Josh Jacobs is really worth taking because the Eagles still, when you look at, again, some of the traits I mentioned that I love about Josh Jacobs is his pass protection. Other than Darren Sproles, I don't really know much about pass protection for Jordan Howard, but other than Darren Sproles, no Eagle running back can really pass protect that well. And I think that'd be a huge asset if the Eagles can get Josh Jacobs. And I think he'll be available for the Eagles if they stay at 25. So that's kind of where I stand right now for what they should do in the first round.
Is there a concern about taking a tackle? Let's say Jawan Taylor falls or an Andre Dillard's available about him not playing right away. You got Jason Peters, you got Lane Johnson. Is there a way to get him involved year one, or do you see it as longer term plus obviously injury insurance for those guys too?
I think there was a slight possibility you can get him in year one just because Jason Peters hasn't been able to play full games lately. I mean, you look at last year, that didn't really happen. So, and I know you have Halapoulivaati Vaitai, who's done a pretty decent job, but I think he could be better in a situation where he has to come in and not have a full, as to you put him in with a full week of preparation. So I think if Vaitai doesn't step up, whoever that first round pick may be, I think can easily take that spot away from Vaitai. So I don't think it's necessarily a sit or basically a redshirt year for whoever the Eagles pick. I think they can get involved right away.
Okay. Can I tell you who I went with the Eagles in my mock draft?
Go right ahead.
And tell me if I'm wrong. You know more about the Eagles than I do. And it's funny, the name we just mentioned, I had you guys taking Rock Ya-Sin from Temple.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I know corner might not be the number one need, but everyone needs corners. So he's a Temple guy.
See, that would be the only thing I would hate with this first round, to be honest with you. Just because the Eagles have their young nucleus now at cornerbacks, it would just puzzle me a little bit unless they're going to make a trade. If they're going to take a cornerback, then I think that spells the end for Rasul Douglas because he's been the trade speculation for pretty much since he's been here. But I liked how he played last year, and that way he improved down the stretch. I mean, you look at him, you look at Crevlon LeBlanc, the way he played in the nickel. I think he's your nickel starter next year because of the way he played in the.
Yeah. Well, LeBlanc could stay there. So Houston's playing on the outside.
Right, yeah, but I'm just saying you have Rasul Douglas. Plus, you just signed Ronald Darby back too. Jalen Mills is coming back from injury.
Isn't Darby on a 1-year deal though?
He is right. I'm just turning in terms of this year. I don't know. I just think I think quarterback. I think they're good where they are right now. I don't think it's really a good fit for that in the first round. But I could be.
That's fair.
I mean, I like for very little I've seen of him. It's. The player itself is not bad. It's just, can he fit? I don't know if I see that.
How does Darrell Henderson in round 2? That's what I had you guys doing at 53, or running back from Memphis. Does that make you feel better?
I don't hate that either. I've seen a lot of good things about him, and I think that'd be good value in the second round too. Should the Eagles go somewhere else, and again, that's going to crowd things, but we'll see how things go. I think anyway, when it comes to running back for the Eagles, it's going to be a battle between Wendell Smallwood and Josh Adams for a roster spot. One of them's not going to be on the team this year, I think, when it comes down to it, because the Eagles are going to draft somebody or two at running back. We just don't know who it is yet, but I wouldn't hate that in the second round, no.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I know you were on Josh Jacobs, so I went with the second round running back with Henderson, and then I went with a linebacker and Easton Stick and a couple other, interior guys to round out the rest of the draft.
But just as the Steelers do, Alex, you mentioned, the Eagles have ammo, too, to move up, which is why I think they should try to move up to get a linebacker if they can. Coming into this draft, they have the number 25. They have 2 2s. They have 2 4s, a 5, 6, and a 7. So I think there's some room to work with there to try and move up to get a linebacker should somebody fall, or some of the similar scenarios you presented earlier with a guy like maybe a Devin Bush maybe come towards the Eagles' way. But I guess they'll have some competition with the Steelers there. But the Eagles have some ammo too to move up if they want to.
Yeah, and we could see, who was the number one guy you'd move up for if you had to move up for somebody.
I really love Devin White. I think that too, but I wouldn't mind Devin Bush either. I think one of those two guys is worth doing. I just don't think I think it's going to be too much to get Josh Allen because I think he's going to go in the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Devin White, I think, is going to be there at 5 for Tampa Bay. So I think it's going to cost you a lot to try to move up there.
Well, we'll see how things play out. I mean, you never know with Howie Roseman. He likes his moves. I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if the Eagles trade back either, but we'll see how things go depending on how the board goes. But I like the Eagles spot that they're in right now. I really do. So I think it's going to be a really productive draft again for the Eagles this year. All right, good.
No, I was just agreeing. I think it is. I think a lot of teams will look to trade back because overall the depth in this class is a lot better than the top end value, and so teams try to go back, collect picks, and get that depth talent.
All right, Alex. So now as we start to wrap things up here, it's time to do our usual mock top 5 that we do every year. This is, again, what we think is going to happen, not necessarily we think of the certain players and things like that, just what we think is going to happen based on what we're hearing, what we're seeing. So, Alex, I'll have you go first. Give me your mock top 5.
This is subject to change. I've been wrestling with it because I probably feel like I have Quinnen Williams too low, but someone falls. So anyway, I'll just shut up and go through it. Kyler Murray still going number 1 to Arizona. I don't believe the reports that he's not the guy. I think that's the misinformation of the draft. San Francisco, number 2. I go with Nick Bosa. Number 3, the Jets, Josh Allen. Number 4, Oakland, as I mentioned earlier, Ed Oliver. I think the Raiders brash to see football player. And then number 5 at Tampa Bay, Devin White, linebacker from LSU.
Wow, so no Quinnen Williams in the top 5.
Yeah, like I said, I think I probably need to switch that either 2 or 3 with Williams. But Oakland says they want to do something surprising, so I don't know. It's probably going to change.
To give that to then, no question there.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex. So you know how I like to do bold predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you one here in my top 5.
All right, hit me.
Let me start out with saying that we're in agreement with 1 and 2. I have Kyler Murray, Nick Bosa 1, 2.
Okay.
Here's where we get interesting. Just seeing today, Grant Paulson of 106.7 The Fan in Washington and NBC Sports Washington tweeted the following, that Dan Snyder, quote, has taken over the first round of the draft. The last time that happened, the Redskins traded 2 future number 1s and a number 2 to get Robert Griffin III.
Mm-hmm.
But then he tweeted this out a little bit later. He just talked to Redskins spokesman and basically denied it, calling it categorically false. But Diana Rossini,
well, that's what Washington says.
Right, of course. I know. I don't believe that for a second. And Diana Rossini is also reporting similar aspects as well, and that there's a lot of the rest of the Redskins brass doesn't want to take a quarterback in the first round. They're not on board with it, but Dan Snyder has full control. So this spoils it. I think the Redskins are going to trade up to number 3 with the Jets and get Dwayne Haskins.
Wow.
There's been a lot of links to him, to the Redskins. The Redskins, it's out there that the Redskins are desperate for a quarterback, so I guess really in this case it's just Dan Snyder again because you don't know what the situation is with Alex Smith with the tough injury from last year. They really don't have anybody else. You saw what happened at the end of the season. The Jets have been the most vocal of a team wanting to trade down, and so I think that's what's going to happen. I got the Redskins trading up with the Jets to get Dwayne Haskins, and then 4, I have Oakland taking Quinnen Williams, and then 5, I have Tampa Bay taking Josh Allen.
Okay, so you have Devin White slipping here a little bit.
No, I have Devin White slipping, but I think he can be maybe 6 or 7. I don't see him falling out of the top 10.
Yeah, I think 11 would be his absolute floor, but I'm rooting for it. I want Devin White to fall out of the top 5 because that means Devin Bush might fall, and I got a better chance if you're Pittsburgh to trade up for him.
Yeah, I'm the same way for the Eagles, so you and I are going to be rooting hard for that, and then we'll be rooting hard against each other to get Devin White.
Yeah, that's funny.
So there you have it. There's my one bold prediction right there.
I like it. Hey, Washington, like you said, Dan Snyder, anything goes.
And by the way, I wouldn't agree with it one bit. I think it would just be a stupid move, so I hope the Redskins do it.
Yeah, as an Eagles fan, yeah, it'd help you out.
Yes, I just don't get it. I mean, especially you would think you would learn from Robert Griffin III, but obviously that wouldn't be the case if Dan Snyder were to do something like that, or if he is planning on doing something like that in general. Well, Alex, it's been another fun draft show. It's always great to be back with you to talk draft. I'm very hyped and getting ready for tomorrow night. I can't wait. Hope I can stay up for it with my morning radio schedule for when the Eagles pick at 25. I'm working out a couple different strategies to make sure I'm ready for number 25 for the Birds. But I can't wait to see what happens, and at least through the top 15, and especially with these quarterbacks. A lot of intrigue here with this draft coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy unpredictable, and I can't wait to recap it.
Definitely, and hopefully we'll be able to do that here on this show. Be sure, especially for Steeler Nation, you follow Alex Kozora on Twitter, especially throughout this whole weekend, at Alex_Kozora. And you can follow me on Twitter at MCatrillo for all my hot takes with the Eagles and some analysis as well mixed in. That's going to do it for our annual draft show here on the Next Game New Game podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at NG_NFL as well. We'll have the link tweeted out once we get done here momentarily to check out the show and get ready for tomorrow night. So for Alex Kozora, I'm Matt Catrillo. Enjoy the 2019 NFL Draft.